Hey guys, tonight we wander into a place so quiet it practically hums under your feet. The Valley of Singing Stones. You trudge along a narrow path flanked by jagged cliffs, sunlight spilling through leafy canopies and golden shafts that make every particle of dust look like a tiny star. You probably won't survive this in the sense that your ordinary sense of reality will take a vacation. The air carries that peculiar mineral scent, mixed with damp moss and something faintly sweet. Like wildflowers you swear don't exist anywhere else. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. While you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. Let's see which corner of the world is following along while you float in this strange valley. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The valley opens like a hidden stage. Stones of all sizes, smoothed by some patient force of nature, are scattered across the floor. Some lie flat, others jut upward like jagged piano keys, and you notice, almost against your better judgment, that they vibrate. Not audibly at first, but under your fingertips. The cold, smooth surface seems to hum in a low, musical pulse. Historians still argue whether ancient peoples intentionally carved these stones to resonate, or if it's simply a quirk of local geology. But standing here, you can't deny that the effect is hypnotic. Fringe researchers whisper of forgotten rituals, of shamans who use stone harmonics to tune the soul, though you suspect they also just really liked echoing music while dancing around campfires. You follow a trail of pebbles that glimmer like scattered silver coins in the dappled light. Each step produces a tiny, bell-like tinkle, as if the valley itself is aware of your intrusion. Somewhere above, a lone bird trills a tune that seems to respond to the stone's vibrations, creating an accidental duet. You pause to press your ear against a flat, obsidian-hued slab. It vibrates faintly under your ear, a soundless melody you can feel in your bones. Around you, the canyon walls are decorated with mossy etchings and scratch marks, signs that humans or creatures once moved through here, leaving traces like whispers from the past. A small historical nugget surfaces in your mind. Similar acoustic stones were reported in Anatolia and parts of Persia, used in ceremonies to amplify chants. The difference here is subtle but undeniable. The hum seems alive, almost playful, as if the stones remember each traveller who dares to step on them. You shake your head, half expecting a wisecracking spirit to pop out and say, "Careful, that note's sharp." Fringe stories claim that some who linger too long hear voices in their own language, speaking things they'd never told anyone. You scoff quietly, though the hairs on your neck insist that maybe, just maybe, something extraordinary is afoot. Walking deeper, the sunlight slants lower, brushing the valley floor in liquid gold. You notice tiny crystals embedded in the stone. When struck lightly by the tips of your shoes, they release minuscule chimes. There's a rhythm here, a subtle pulse that your mind tries to track, but it keeps shifting, like the valley itself is alive and listening. Historians debate whether these effects were understood by ancient civilizations or entirely accidental, and you find yourself smiling at the thought of some long-gone wanderer slipping on a crystal pebble and inadvertently composing the first symphony of the valley. You take a deep breath, inhaling the faintly metallic tang of stone dust mixed with fragrant moss, feeling grounded and unmoored simultaneously. A small lizard darts past, its scales glinting like sequins, adding a percussive tap to the symphony underfoot. You might catch yourself humming along, even though you know you're in no choir. Here, the valley hums in response to your presence, a gentle reminder that while it is ancient, it is not indifferent. Every footstep, every exhale seems to draw it further into your consciousness. And then, just when you think you've grown accustomed to the valley's quiet music, a sudden vibration resonates through a cluster of stones nearby. It's louder, more insistent, as if the valley has decided you're ready for its next message. You crouch, and run your fingers across the smooth surface, feeling energy trickle up your arms, a sensation both grounding and oddly exhilarating. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you recall reading that some of these stones contain rare minerals that naturally amplify sound. Fringe enthusiasts claim the ancients discovered a way to sing with the stones, though skeptics insist it's just geology showing off. You decide not to argue. The valley's pulse is more persuasive than any debate. By the time you reach a bend where sunlight fades and moss thickens, the hum has woven itself into your heartbeat. You realize that the valley is not merely a place to pass through. It's a place to notice, to feel, and maybe, if you're very lucky, to understand. You sit on a smooth, low stone, listening as the valley breathes with you, and in that suspended moment, the rest of the world, emails, deadlines, street noise, seems absurdly distant. As you rise from that low, humming stone, the canyon narrows, and the walls close in like a theatre preparing for an audience of centuries. You notice faint lines etched into the moss, delicate grooves that might be nothing more than the work of rain, or perhaps messages left by hands long gone. The air grows cooler, and the faint scent of wet earth deepens, mingling with something woodsy and faintly metallic, as though the valley itself has a secret perfume designed to keep intruders curious yet cautious. You run your fingers along the grooves, feeling the shallow impressions, and it's almost as if the stones are breathing stories at you. Historians still argue whether these markings were practical, decorative, or spiritual in purpose, and you can't help but wonder if you're trespassing into an unrecorded ritual of an ancient people. Fringe accounts claim that the inscriptions sometimes shift overnight, changing the stories they tell to those who dare to read them. You chuckle softly. You'd love to see the stones pull a prank, though the thought makes your pulse quicken just a little. Walking further, you come across an arch of rock, jagged yet curiously balanced, like the valley itself appreciates aesthetic drama. Hanging from it are tiny, crystalline stalactites, catching slivers of sunlight that pierce through the leafy canopy above. Each crystal seems to catch a fragment of the valley's hum, refracting it into a faint tinkling counterpoint. You press your ear against a cool patch of the arch, and a strange sensation washes over you. You hear a whisper of voices, too soft to distinguish, as if travellers from centuries past are passing through your consciousness. The notion that this valley might preserve echoes of memory is delightfully unnerving. You remember reading about similar acoustic phenomena in the caves of Cappadocia, where ancient carvings and natural formations amplified voices in ways scholars still debate. The valley's walls are increasingly dense with mosses and tiny ferns, their green luminescence almost otherworldly in the dim light. Tiny insects crawl across the wet stone, their movement contributing percussively to the symphony underfoot. You crouch to examine a peculiar section where the moss forms natural patterns resembling writing, a script that seems vaguely familiar but maddeningly unreadable. Fringe scholars suggest these formations are a form of early cryptography, or perhaps an attempt to communicate with the spirits of the valley. You shake your head and laugh softly. Either way, it's impossible not to feel a connection with whoever or whatever shaped this place. The further you go, the more the sounds shift. The soft hum from the stones now carries subtle variations, almost as if the valley is responding to your mood, gauging your curiosity and adjusting its melody accordingly. You pass a small depression in the stone floor where water collects in a perfect circle, reflecting sunlight like liquid glass. When you tap the water, it resonates, not just with a splash, but with a faint harmonic tone that makes your teeth tingle ever so slightly. You remember reading that certain water-filled rock depressions were used in rituals across Mesopotamia to listen to the world below. Though historians still argue whether those claims are literal or allegorical, you decide the valley is certainly entertaining enough to be literal. A peculiar phenomenon captures your attention. A narrow channel carved into the wall looks like it could channel air and sound in precise ways. You lean closer, whispering into the hollow, and the sound curves around the valley before returning to you, altered, almost conversational. You can't help but grin at this. The stones are teaching you a new language, one of resonance and echo. Fringe stories mention travellers claiming to hold conversations with the valley itself, though skeptics attribute it to the mind's tendency to detect patterns. You shrug, thinking it's the perfect excuse to be a little gullible in a place this magical. By the time you reach a broader plateau, you see that the walls are now densely etched with symbols, concentric circles, lines, and abstract shapes. They are moss-rimmed and gleam faintly, suggesting a deliberate pattern. You lean in to study them, feeling a quiet thrill. Historians still argue whether these marks represent early calendrical systems or ceremonial maps of some forgotten festival. Fringe theorists insist that the shapes shift under moonlight, revealing secret directions to hidden treasures. You brush away a bit of moss to reveal a pattern that almost looks like a musical staff, as though the valley itself is trying to score its song. You can't stop yourself from tapping a few stones in rhythm, listening as the valley responds, faintly, as if chuckling at your improvisation. Stepping back, you notice tiny carvings of human figures near the base of the wall. They're small, delicate, almost imperceptible unless you search carefully. They seem to move subtly when you look away, an optical illusion, surely, though a shiver runs down your spine. Someone, long ago, wanted to record presence here, to mark passage, or perhaps simply to play with future visitors like you. The valley hums on, and you feel your heartbeat synchronize with the vibrations beneath your feet, a slow, comforting thrum. The subtle interplay of light, moss, water, and stone whispers that you're not intruding, but participating. Before the path bends sharply upward toward a rocky overlook, you pause and breathe deeply. The air is richer here, tinged with minerals and moisture, carrying the faintest hint of something sweet, like distant wildflower honey. You realize that with every step, the valley has slowly taught you its rhythm, its way of drawing attention to small details. A leaf flutter, a crystal chiming, a stone vibrating just beneath your palm. Historians debate whether such natural acoustics were ever intentionally discovered or merely stumbled upon, and you silently hope the valley never cares, which is true. Finally, the overlook gives you a panoramic view of the valley floor below. Sunlight dances on the stones, illuminating their subtle vibrations in a dazzling display. Tiny patches of mist rise from pools scattered across the terrain, carrying with them the valley's song blending into the wind. You feel a lightness, a giddy sense that perhaps you have stumbled into a living museum, a place that resists being pinned down in books or photographs. Fringe whispers claim that travellers who linger too long here sometimes start seeing past events replay across the stones, a natural memory theatre. You shrug, let out a quiet chuckle, and step forward, eager to see where the valley will guide you next. You follow the valley as it twists and turns, the path now lined with stones that glisten with moisture, reflecting sunlight in tiny, scattered rainbows. A gentle stream cuts through the canyon floor, its surface rippling with a musical quality, like liquid glass vibrating in response to some unseen conductor. You kneel and run your fingers through the cool water. It carries not just the taste of fresh minerals, but also a strange resonance that seems to hum against your skin. Historians still argue whether such streams might have naturally captured ambient vibrations to preserve acoustic memories, and you find yourself thinking that if rivers could have ears, this one certainly would. Fringe theorists go further, claiming that the water retains the voices of travellers past, replaying them to those willing to listen. You tilt your head, half amused, half curious, and hear what could be laughter, or the distant splash of someone stepping in just the right place centuries ago. The stream curves and narrows, forming a shallow pool where the surface is glassy and perfectly reflective. You catch sight of a heron delicately stepping through the water, its mirrored image shimmering beneath it. Every movement seems amplified. The water carries the faintest traces of sound, turning simple ripples into a symphony of delicate chimes. You remember reading about how ancient cultures used reflective water surfaces in rituals, sometimes to speak with spirits. Though historians still argue whether these practices were symbolic or literal. You shake your head, smiling at the thought of some early philosopher kneeling here, debating ethics while inadvertently inventing an aquatic musical instrument. Walking along the bank, you notice pebbles that aren't just smooth, they seem almost polished to perfection. Each step you take sets off tiny harmonics, creating a layered tapestry of sound that merges with the stream's murmurs. A few scattered reeds sway in the gentle breeze, brushing the water with a whispering hiss that harmonizes with the stone's low hum. Fringe accounts suggest that if you listen carefully, you might hear the memories of previous travellers, their footsteps, murmurs, even conversations, echoed faintly in the stones and water. You can't help smirking at the idea, imagining some weary merchant centuries ago stepping in these very stones, perhaps losing a coin, perhaps dropping a secret letter, leaving an imprint the valley refuses to forget. The stream begins to widen, forming a natural amphitheatre with steep stone sides covered in thick moss. Tiny waterfalls tumble into pools, each drop producing a delicate note, like nature's own wind chimes. You crouch near one pool and tap a stone gently, marvelling as the water seems to vibrate in sync, producing a soft, liquid tone that resonates through your chest. Historians debate whether acoustic properties like this were ever understood scientifically in antiquity, or if they were simply appreciated aesthetically, but standing here, the distinction feels trivial. Fringe enthusiasts claim that if you hum a certain pitch while the water ripples, the stones themselves answer, creating a playful call and response. You try it, an absurd, sleepy little hum, and swear you hear a faint teasing echo that doesn't match the pitch exactly, like the valley is laughing quietly at your curiosity. A small wooden bridge arches over the stream, ancient and moss-clad, though surprisingly sturdy. You cross it carefully, feeling the slight give of old timber, and notice carvings in the stone on either side, symbols of animals, spirals, and abstract figures. Some seem almost musical, as though someone tried to encode a melody in stone centuries ago. You recall reading that ancient Persians and Anatolians sometimes inscribed sound maps onto surfaces, attempting to guide chants or prayers for optimal resonance. Historians still argue whether these were purely ceremonial or functional acoustic designs, and you can't help but feel a thrill at the possibility that this bridge is part of that tradition. Fringe voices whisper of hidden messages for those who dare to interpret vibrations rather than letters, a secret music encoded in stone. The stream narrows again, the banks rising into jagged cliffs that funnel sound like a natural recording studio. You lean close, cupping water in your hands, and let it trickle through your fingers. The tiny splashes create an echo that travels farther than seems physically possible, bouncing back in intricate patterns. You grin, recalling a quirky fact from your reading. Ancient cultures sometimes believed that rivers retained emotional energy from all who touched them. If that's true, then this valley's stream is one of the most emotionally rich bodies of water on Earth. Grief, joy, laughter, and whispered secrets mingling in perpetual harmony. Fringe enthusiasts suggest that if you meditate here long enough, you might hear past conversations clearly. You shake your head, laughing softly. You're not entirely convinced, but the idea is deliciously tempting. A faint mist rises from the water, curling around your ankles like delicate smoke. It carries with it subtle scents of wet stone, fresh moss, and something floral you can't quite name. As you walk, the valley seems to hum in tandem with the stream, each ripple, each stone, each droplet participating in a layered performance. You notice small insects skimming the surface, their tiny legs creating additional percussive accents that somehow fit perfectly into the melody. You let your mind drift, imagining a traveller centuries ago leaning over this very water, whispering a question, a hope, or a secret, and the valley answering with soft, vibrating sympathy. As the sun dips lower, casting golden light over the surface, you pause to take it all in. The water, the stones, the echoes of voices past, they combine into something that is simultaneously soothing and uncanny. You realize that this stream isn't just flowing through the valley, it's flowing through time, carrying the memories, moods, and melodies of everyone who has dared to step here. Historians may still argue over whether it was engineered or natural, real or mystical, but you don't need an answer. You simply let the valley sing around you, feeling its strange, timeless embrace, and step forward, ready for the next turn in this extraordinary journey. The valley begins to twist and darken as the sun dips behind the cliff walls, casting long, undulating shadows that stretch across your path. You notice shapes shifting in the half-light, rocks that look like benches, arches, or even animals frozen mid-leap. And then, just as you round a bend, you see them, faint silhouettes of merchants, lingering in the twilight, their outlines slightly blurred as if painted with mist. They carry wares that defy logic, delicate glass orbs containing what looks like captured clouds, spices that shimmer with internal light, and fabrics that ripple like liquid metal. Your heart flutters. The market feels alive yet impossibly fleeting, like a dream dangling just beyond grasp. Fringe legends claim that this spectral bazaar only appears to those truly attuned to the valley's song, while skeptics shrug and chalk it up to tricks of shadow and light. You watch, trying to make sense of it, and a strange thought hits. You might be trespassing in a commerce that history forgot to record. As you step closer, the air smells faintly of roasting nuts and sweet smoke, though no fire is visible. The spectral merchants gesture silently, beckoning with thin, wraith-like hands. You see tiny trinkets that twinkle like stars embedded in tiny boxes, and you wonder how long they've been waiting for someone to notice. Historians still argue whether marketplaces like these ever existed in folk tales as literal events or metaphorical spaces for storytelling, and standing here, you feel that ambiguity acutely. Fringe enthusiasts whisper of travellers who have bought items from these shadow merchants, only to find them vanished at dawn, or worse, items that transform unpredictably once taken from the valley. You shake your head, imagining trying to explain such a purchase to a sceptical friend. Yes, I bought a jar of cloud, and yes, it hummed back at me. You wander through the narrow aisles between hovering stalls, brushing against hanging lanterns that glow with soft, internal light. One orb, delicate as a soap bubble, floats past you, releasing a faint tinkle when it collides with the edge of a moss-covered stone. The valley's natural acoustics amplify it, turning a tiny incident into a musical flourish. You can't help but grin at the absurdity. If there were any rules for a conventional marketplace, this definitely violates them. And yet, the ambience feels deliberate, almost ritualistic, like the valley is staging its own secret festival for your benefit. You recall a historical tidbit. Some ancient Middle Eastern markets employed subtle architectural tricks to amplify sound for storytelling or announcements. Historians still argue whether those techniques were practical or simply showmanship. But here, you're witnessing something undeniably mesmerizing. A small table lined with items glitters in a beam of fading sunlight. There are tiny instruments carved from bone, delicate jewellery that seems to hum, and tiny jars of glowing powder. One spectral merchant tilts its head at you, and you catch the glint of an impossible smile, though its face is only half-formed. Fringe law insists that if you take something without asking, it will vanish in the next hour, but if you ask politely, it might remain until you leave. You tiptoe closer, pretending to inspect a tiny, humming sphere, and the valley seems to pulse, almost encouraging your curiosity while warning against recklessness. You notice that some of the merchants mimic gestures from real markets you've visited, counting invisible coins, nudging invisible patrons, offering silent discounts, but every action is subtly off, like a memory of commerce warped by time or magic. It's unnerving and delightful in equal measure. You remember reading that certain medieval caravans in Persia were described as moving bazaars, and while those accounts were mundane, historians still argue whether some chroniclers exaggerated tales to make them sound magical. Here, though, exaggeration is irrelevant. You can feel it. The market hums with the same energy as the valley itself, blending music, movement, and mystery into one seamless performance. A faint breeze brushes through, carrying hints of far-off spices and strange metallic tangs, and you realize the valley has orchestrated its environment with meticulous, playful precision. You pause, letting the sounds, scents, and faint visual shimmer soak into your consciousness. A spectral merchant gestures toward a distant arch, its meaning unclear yet oddly inviting. You chuckle, thinking that this valley has excellent marketing instincts, subtle, immersive, and impossible to ignore. Fringe enthusiasts claim that those who follow such gestures are rewarded with glimpses of hidden paths, while skeptics suggest it's merely your mind filling in patterns. Either way, you feel drawn to continue, curious where this unrecorded marketplace might lead. The shadows lengthen, and the valley seems to hum more intensely, the combination of stone resonance and spectral activity creating a hypnotic, layered melody. Tiny sounds of laughter, bargaining, and whispered negotiations intertwine with the natural acoustics of the canyon, giving the impression of a market alive not only with merchants, but with the very essence of human curiosity and memory. You take a deep breath, realizing that what you're witnessing is more than a fleeting visual trick. It's an experience that engages every sense, demanding your attention while gently coaxing you forward. As you step toward a narrow exit of the bazaar, the sounds fade slightly, replaced by the valley's familiar hum and the distant babble of your memory-laden stream. You pause, glancing back, and for a fleeting moment, you think you see a tiny figure wave goodbye, or perhaps it was just the corner of your eye playing tricks. Either way, the memory of the Market of Shadows clings to your mind, a whispered promise that the valley holds more wonders just beyond sight, waiting to be discovered by those who are attentive, daring, or just inexplicably curious like you. You leave the spectral market behind, stepping onto a stretch of valley floor that suddenly feels more ancient, more deliberate. Massive monoliths rise like slumbering sentinels, their surfaces mottled with lichen and etched patterns. At first, they seem like ordinary stones, but as you approach, you notice subtle movements, as if the massive figures are shifting imperceptibly, adjusting their stance in response to your presence. A low, almost inaudible vibration runs through the ground, resonating up your legs and through your chest. Fringe accounts insist that the Valley's stone guardians were placed by an ancient civilization to teach patience, though skeptics suggest simple tectonic settling produces the illusion of movement. You chuckle nervously. Patience isn't exactly your strongest trait, but you slow your steps anyway, caught up in the surreal performance. The largest monolith tilts slightly as you pass, throwing a long shadow that stretches like an arm toward the moss-covered valley floor. You reach out, fingers grazing the cool, rough surface, and feel a faint pulse beneath your touch. It's as if the stone remembers you, or perhaps remembers everyone who ever dared to wander this way. Historians still argue whether similar monolithic structures in ancient Persia and Anatolia were functional, ceremonial, or purely symbolic. Fringe enthusiasts go further, claiming these stones sometimes communicate by vibration, whispering warnings or advice to those attuned. You shake your head, smiling, but can't deny the tingle that runs up your arm when the stone hums back. A thin path winds between the monoliths, and as you follow it, you notice carvings of creatures, some real, some impossibly hybrid, etched across the surfaces, a deer with wings, a fish with legs, and figures that appear both human and mineral. You step carefully, aware that each footfall contributes to a subtle chorus, your shoes against pebbles, a distant water drop, the hum of monoliths in response. Fringe lore says these hybrid carvings were meant to record dreams of travellers, though historians debate whether they were artistic exaggeration or early myth-making. Standing here, you think you understand both interpretations, the valley embracing whimsy and seriousness in equal measure. The vibration beneath your feet grows more pronounced as you navigate a narrow corridor formed by two leaning monoliths. You notice a faint echo, almost conversational, and instinctively lower your voice, whispering a hello to the stones. The valley responds with a subtle shift, a resonant hum that feels like acknowledgement. You grin, recalling a quirky historical tidbit. Ancient civilizations sometimes built structures with resonant qualities to amplify prayers, a practice historians still debate in terms of whether it was spiritual or acoustic ingenuity. Fringe stories suggest that these monoliths listen to intentions, subtly rewarding respectful visitors with enhanced resonance. You feel both silly and honoured to be part of this dialogue. As the path opens to a wider expanse, the monoliths form a natural arena. Sunlight filters through cracks above, highlighting tiny veins of mineral that glint in rhythm with the stone's vibration. You pause, letting the low hum fill your senses, a symphony of mineral and memory. Tiny insects skitter across the surfaces, adding delicate percussion to the music. You notice the way shadows stretch and bend as if the valley itself is conducting a silent orchestra, a performance that predates any written record. Fringe enthusiasts claim that those who linger here may hear subtle lessons from the stones, whispered in rhythm with your heartbeat. You lean back against a sturdy slab, feeling the vibrations course gently through you, grounding and exhilarating at once. The largest monolith stands like a watchful elder, its surface covered in etched patterns that catch the fading light. Spirals, circles, and jagged lines seem almost animated as shadows play across them. You crouch to trace a finger along one spiral, feeling a subtle thrum beneath your touch. Historians still argue whether such carvings were navigational, ceremonial, or symbolic. You suspect all three might be true here. The valley doesn't limit itself to simple explanations. Fringe tales suggest that if you align your breathing with the stone's subtle pulse, you might glimpse a fleeting vision of past travellers, a tableau preserved in mineral memory. You hum softly in response, a tiny, imperfect duet with stone and shadow. A cool breeze wafts through the arena, carrying scents of wet stone, distant flowers, and a faint metallic tang. The valley seems to lean closer, amplifying its hum, the monolith's subtle shifts creating a gentle cadence that matches your heartbeat. You laugh quietly at the absurdity of a valley conducting a symphony, but it's hard not to surrender to the strange, meditative rhythm. Fringe enthusiasts claim some travellers feel physically lighter, as though the stones lift tension, a natural relaxation orchestra. You settle into that notion, feeling tension dissolve with each subtle pulse, each vibrating note. Finally, as you step toward the far edge of the arena, you notice a cluster of smaller stones, arranged almost like audience seating. You sit, letting the vibrations wash over you fully. Somewhere in your mind, you recall reading about similar monolith arrangements in ancient ceremonial sites, used for observation, storytelling, or community rituals. Historians still argue whether these functions were singular or multifaceted, and here you sense the answer is irrelevant. The valley teaches through presence rather than explanation. You lean back, close your eyes briefly, and let the Guardian's hum resonate, feeling a profound connection to the valley's pulse, an intimate reminder that even stone can participate in memory song and a touch of mischief. The valley's mist begins to rise as you continue along the winding path, curling around your ankles and drifting upward in lazy, translucent spirals. It carries with it the faintest hints of moss, wet stone, and something sweetly floral, like honeysuckle mixed with the tang of minerals. You can feel the mist clinging to your skin, cool and soft, and you realize it carries more than moisture, it carries sound. Tiny harmonics ripple through it, bending and refracting the stone's underlying hums, creating delicate chords that seem almost orchestrated. Historians still argue whether the valley's acoustics are purely natural or the product of careful ancient design. Though the effect is undeniable, the mist becomes a living instrument, amplifying even your quietest steps. Fringe tales suggest that inhaling the mist while listening closely might reveal secret melodies, songs left by travellers long gone, echoing through both air and stone. You chuckle softly, imagining trying to record that on a phone. Good luck capturing ghostly harmonics in a haze of valley fog. The fog thickens in patches, swirling around towering rocks that resemble abstract sculptures. Each stone seems to vibrate in subtly different tones, creating a layered polyphony that dances around your senses. You notice how the mist enhances this effect, smoothing sharp edges and carrying sound farther than seems physically possible. The combination is hypnotic, compelling you to pause and listen, each note lingering a little longer than expected. Fringe enthusiasts claim that some stones respond only to human presence, harmonizing with the footsteps, breath, and heartbeat of the visitor. You try walking softly, experimenting with the rhythm, and notice faint variations as though the valley is acknowledging your attempts. Historians still debate whether such responsiveness could ever have been intentionally designed, or if it's simply the magic of natural acoustics. But standing here, logic feels beside the point. A sudden, soft whistle of wind slides through the mist, carrying a tone that makes your teeth tingle slightly. It's almost melodic, a fragile thread of song that weaves seamlessly into the stone's underlying hum. You tilt your head, trying to pinpoint its source, and realize the valley seems to have no single origin point. The sound drifts from everywhere at once, surrounding you, wrapping you in layers of auditory texture. Fringe accounts suggest that the valley sings in response to human emotions, subtly adjusting its tone to mirror curiosity, awe, or nervous excitement. You shake your head, smiling. Surely the stones don't care about your feelings, but somehow you feel acknowledged, as if the valley itself is an amused, invisible companion. As you move deeper into the mist, the path narrows, funneling between two massive stone walls covered in moss and lichen. Tiny droplets condense on the surfaces, catching stray beams of light and refracting them into tiny, ephemeral rainbows that drift lazily through the air. The subtle tinkling of droplets joining the valley's symphony is accompanied by distant echoes, like whispers carried from far-off chambers. Historians still argue whether such natural acoustics were exploited in ceremonial spaces or merely appreciated for their aesthetic properties. Fringe enthusiasts delight in claiming that the echoes sometimes form coherent words, offering advice or riddles to those attuned, though you decide not to argue either way. Listening is enough. A small stone ledge juts out over a shallow pool below, and you step carefully onto it. The surface shimmers as ripples spread across the water, carrying faint reflections of the mist and rocks above. Each ripple seems to bend sound in unique ways, producing tiny harmonic overtones that interact with the stone's hum. You lean forward, dipping your fingers into the cool water, and the effect is immediate. The valley seems to amplify the contact, producing a delicate, almost imperceptible resonance that hums against your palms. Fringe sources claim that early alchemists believed water could remember the vibrations of surroundings, holding on to subtle energies long after they were created. Historians still debate whether these claims were metaphoric or empirical, but here, in this misty amphitheatre, it feels palpably real. The mist thickens further, curling into ethereal shapes that briefly resemble figures, some human, some animal, before dissolving into nothingness. Your imagination flits from one interpretation to another, each possibility more enchanting than the last. You catch sight of a small bird perched on a mossy branch, its tiny song integrating seamlessly with the valley's underlying hum. The effect is almost meditative, a subtle lullaby that seems designed to slow the mind and attune the senses. Fringe enthusiasts insist that travellers sometimes perceive brief, ghostly dances or fleeting apparitions of past visitors, all orchestrated by the valley's acoustics. You laugh quietly to yourself, imagining the valley as a mischievous conductor of invisible performers. As the trail curves upward, the mist parts enough for sunlight to filter in slanting rays, illuminating crystalline veins in the stones. The subtle shimmer adds a visual layer to the auditory landscape, turning every vibration into a small spectacle of light and sound. You feel almost weightless, the combined effects of mist, stones, and resonances creating a gentle sense of floating. Historians still argue whether similar natural formations in ancient ceremonial sites were purposefully used for sound manipulation, while fringe accounts insist such sites are portals to heightened sensory experience. Here, the valley doesn't seem concerned with labels, it simply exists, a living, breathing, vibrating ecosystem of stone, water, and fog. Finally, as you step into a slightly broader clearing, the mist thins just enough to reveal the valley stretching ahead. The stones continue to hum in a delicate counterpoint, their vibrations weaving into the faint rush of water and whisper of wind. You pause, closing your eyes and letting the layered symphony wash over you. A soft smile tugs at your lips as the valley's mist swirls gently, carrying with it a quiet, almost imperceptible melody. It feels like the universe itself is taking a deep breath alongside you, and you, in turn, exhale into the valley, becoming one more note in its endless song. You wander on, following the gentle incline of the valley, and soon a lone figure appears ahead, a traveller unlike the spectral merchants from before. He is a wandering trader, draped in layers of earthy cloth, boots caked with the valley's fine dust, and a satchel overflowing with curious trinkets. Moonlight filters through a break in the canopy, glinting off his glassware and metallic charms, making them shimmer like captured starlight. He stops mid-step, eyes narrowing in a mild surprise at your presence, and then nods as if greeting an old acquaintance he only half expected to meet. Fringe stories suggest that such merchants are more than human, occasionally embodying spirits of the valley who barter in both knowledge and objects. While historians still argue whether similar wandering traders in ancient folklore were literal figures or symbolic guides for travellers, you step closer, heart skipping a beat, not entirely sure if you're witnessing history, myth, or something deliciously in between. He beckons you silently toward a flat stone beside the stream, and you comply, feeling the soft hum of the valley beneath your feet. With practiced movements, he lays out his wares, tiny spheres that ripple with liquid light, jars of crystalline powders that sparkle without any apparent source, and delicate instruments that hum faintly, each one resonating in tune with the valley's natural symphony. You pick up a small, glassy orb and feel a warmth radiate from it, a curious pulse that seems almost alive. Historians still argue whether such objects described in Middle Eastern marketplaces were mere fanciful storytelling or representations of real, magical items. Fringe enthusiasts whisper that some travellers leave with such trinkets permanently altered by the valley's vibrations, their physical properties subtly tuned to resonate with the observer's mood. You grin, realizing that this moment feels both intimate and impossibly surreal. The trader begins recounting a tale in a hushed, rhythmic cadence. his voice barely above a whisper yet amplified by the valley's acoustics. He speaks of moonlit journeys across shifting sands, of bargains struck with beings who may not have been entirely human, and of objects that alter perception if handled improperly. You listen, enraptured, feeling the rhythm of his story interweaving with the valley's own natural music. A quirky historical note flits into your mind. Itinerant merchants in medieval Persia were sometimes credited with carrying knowledge, recipes, or instruments that shaped local cultures, though historians still argue whether these stories exaggerate reality. Fringe lore contends that a valley like this records these tales in subtle vibrations, embedding memories in the stones themselves, so even centuries later, a visitor can hear the merchant's voice. You shake your head with a soft laugh, partly amused, partly in awe. He pulls a tiny flute from his satchel and blows a single note. The valley responds immediately, the stones echoing and harmonizing in a way that seems impossibly precise, as if the world itself were part of an elaborate duet. You raise an eyebrow, remembering similar historical accounts of sound amplification in ancient ceremonial spaces, though historians still debate whether such effects were intentional or happy accidents. Fringe observers insist that some travellers could communicate with the valley simply through musical interaction. You hum along tentatively, testing the resonance, and swear you feel the stones vibrate under your hands, aligning with the pattern of your breath. It's playful, hypnotic, and just a touch unnerving, the kind of experience that lingers in memory long after the moment passes. As the story continues, you notice the subtle layering of the trader's words with environmental sounds. A distant drip of water echoes like punctuation. Leaves brushing against stone provide a percussive accent, and the faint rustle of wind through the canopy adds a gentle drone. You realize that his narrative is inseparable from the valley itself. The setting amplifies, decorates, and even interprets the story. Fringe enthusiasts claim this kind of interaction preserves oral history, embedding it into the acoustics for future listeners. Historians still argue whether oral tradition and environmental resonance ever intentionally overlapped in ancient times, but you decide the distinction is irrelevant. The experience is captivating. You lean closer as he recounts a tale of a silver coin that never tarnished, passed between travellers who were never quite human, and of a stone that could sing the holder's deepest desires. A soft chuckle escapes you. You know the story is a blend of exaggeration, imagination, and possibly subtle truth, but the valley itself seems to underscore every word, vibrating gently in approval or amusement. Fringe legend suggests that listening too long may blur the line between reality and story. But you can't resist, drawn in by the hypnotic cadence of his voice combined with the valley's harmonic accompaniment. Finally, the trader leans back, letting the silence linger for a heartbeat that stretches to infinity. The valley hums softly in the background, carrying subtle hints of his tale into every stone, every ripple of the stream, every mist-wrapped branch. You realize that in a place like this, stories aren't simply told, they're felt, sung, and woven into the very fabric of the land. You rise, feeling the pull of curiosity guiding you onward, and with a respectful nod, you leave the wandering merchant to his quiet, eternal storytelling, knowing that the valley has absorbed another layer of narrative, ready to share it with the next attentive listener, brave enough to follow its winding path. The path ahead narrows again, flanked by walls of stone that lean inward as though the valley itself wants to share a secret with you. The hum intensifies subtly, like a low chord vibrating in sympathy with your heartbeat. You notice streaks of mineral across the stone, glinting faintly under the dappled sunlight, forming patterns that might be random, or perhaps a deliberate code left by some long-forgotten hand. Historians still argue whether such markings were purely decorative, functional maps, or ceremonial indicators, and you can't help but feel a thrill imagining them as encoded messages awaiting discovery. Fringe enthusiasts whisper that these patterns sometimes shift slightly if observed too long, hinting at a living intelligence in the valley's design. You shake your head, smiling at the thought of stones playing tricks, and take a cautious step forward. The narrow corridor opens slightly to reveal a small alcove. The walls densely covered with moss that seems almost phosphorescent in the low light. Tiny fungi cling to cracks in the stone, releasing a subtle, earthy scent that blends with the valley's ongoing hum. You crouch, brushing your fingers across the moss, and notice tiny shapes forming within the green, spirals, dots, miniature symbols that might represent abstract concepts or simply the playful hand of nature. Fringe lore suggests that moss in such sacred spaces is subtly responsive, growing in patterns that mirror human emotion or presence. While historians still debate whether ancient cultures actually believed in such responsiveness, or if it's merely metaphorical, you let your fingers linger, enjoying the tactile symphony. A trickle of water winds through the alcove, feeding a shallow pool whose surface mirrors the overhead canopy. The pool captures and amplifies the valley's hum in delicate crystalline overtones. You tap a finger against the water, and a soft resonance runs up your arm, echoing faintly from the stone walls. You chuckle, thinking that if the valley wanted to compose a bedtime lullaby, it could do so effortlessly. Historical accounts from ancient Persia and Anatolia mention listening pools, where travellers pause to meditate or receive guidance. Though historians still argue whether these were literal practices or allegorical storytelling devices, fringe stories insist that pools like this capture memory, holding echoes of conversation and footsteps from centuries past, accessible to those attuned to the valley's resonance. You let the ripples wash your thoughts clean, feeling momentarily suspended in a timeless rhythm. The path slopes upward, and as you ascend, a subtle change in tone occurs. The hum shifts into a series of gentle, bell-like notes, harmonizing with distant water droplets and the soft rustle of leaves above. The air feels lighter here, carrying a faint sweetness, like nectar and stone dust mixed. You pause, taking a deep breath, letting the valley's orchestrated calm fill your lungs. Fringe enthusiasts claim that altitude changes can subtly alter acoustic perception, amplifying certain frequencies while diminishing others, effectively composing the valley's music as you move through it. Historians still argue whether such acoustic manipulation was ever understood scientifically in antiquity, but you realize the valley doesn't need approval, it simply is. Along the ascent, you notice faint carvings etched into the stone walls, small figures engaged in curious activities, dancing, hunting, and playing instruments that seem both familiar and impossibly alien. You crouch, tracing a finger along one particularly elaborate etching, a figure striking a triangular harp. Historians still debate whether musical instruments depicted in ancient rock art were symbolic, ceremonial, or functional, while fringe observers suggest that these carvings can transmit subtle vibrations when touched in precise ways, creating mini resonances that interact with the valley's overall hum. You tap gently along the harp strings, and a faint echo returns, an almost imperceptible duet with the valley itself. The corridor widens into a high-ceilinged cavern, the roof arcing above like the hull of a great inverted ship. Light filters through cracks in the stone, illuminating mineral veins that glint like starlight. A gentle breeze stirs the mist, creating shifting halos of refracted light. The valley hum resonates more fully here, each vibration layered, deepening in tone and texture. You let your eyes wander over the walls, spotting tiny, almost hidden alcoves containing miniature statuettes carved from stone, bone, and crystal. Fringe accounts suggest these represent ancestral figures or guardians, imbuing the cavern with protective resonance. Historians still argue whether such miniature carvings served ritualistic purposes, educational storytelling, or simple artistry. But here, the line feels irrelevant. You marvel at the craftsmanship, the layering of function, artistry, and acoustic design. A soft sound catches your attention, a delicate tapping, like fingernails on wood, though no wood is in sight. You trace it to a small stone formation where a thin stream trickles through a narrow chasm, striking the rocks rhythmically. Each drop harmonizes perfectly with the cavern's hum, producing tiny arpeggios that you swear were intended for musical appreciation. You kneel, listening closely, letting your attention drift into the symphony of water, stone, and echoing mist. Fringe enthusiasts claim that rhythmic water in natural caverns can communicate intentions or mood shifts, while historians still debate whether ancient peoples consciously designed spaces for this effect or merely marvelled at accidental resonance. You grin, amused that either way, the valley is performing for you. Finally, you reach the cavern's far edge, where a small overlook reveals the valley below, stretching and winding like a silver ribbon of mist and stone. The hum softens here, fading into gentle undertones that seem to invite contemplation. You lean against a smooth boulder, breathing deeply, feeling the valley's vibrations settle into a calm, almost meditative rhythm within you. Tiny lights sparkle on distant stones, and the whisper of water from far below carries faint, musical echoes upward. Historians may still debate the original purpose of such formations. Fringe enthusiasts may claim sentient resonance, but you simply let the valley enfold you, feeling present, curious, and profoundly alive. You descend from the cavern overlook, following a path that twists through clusters of jagged stones, their surfaces mottled with moss and tiny crystalline veins. Each step produces a faint chime, the valley's hum interlacing with your footfalls in a rhythm that is at once soothing and slightly mischievous. The light has shifted. Golden hues mingle with the soft blues of evening, painting the stone walls in a spectrum that seems almost deliberate, as if the valley itself were an artist. Fringe accounts claim that certain valleys tune light and sound to affect mood, producing subconscious effects on travellers' perception, while historians still debate whether ancient cultures intentionally leveraged such natural phenomena or simply admired their accidental beauty. You shake your head, smiling. You're not here to analyse, just to experience, letting the valley's orchestra play over every nerve ending. A narrow stream cuts across the path, the water shallow but sparkling with small mineral fragments. You kneel to touch the surface, and the valley responds instantly. The stream ripples, echoing your movements with delicate, high-pitched tones that resonate through the stones. A curious insect skims across the water, creating a percussive accompaniment. You recall reading that some ancient cultures believed running water could record the presence of humans, a concept historians still debate, though standing here it feels surprisingly plausible. Fringe enthusiasts argue that the stream might even reply to specific tones or patterns, a playful acoustic memory embedded in liquid form. You try whistling a simple note and watch as the water seems to shimmer in rhythm, the valley winking at your curiosity. Continuing along the bank, you notice a grove of thin, wiry trees growing from cracks in the stone. Their bark is streaked with white and silver, and the leaves tremble in the slightest breeze, creating a soft, rustling accompaniment to the valley's hum. Tiny birds perch among the branches, their calls blending seamlessly with the natural symphony. Fringe lore insists that the trees act as amplifiers, channeling and diffusing the valley's acoustic energy, while historians still debate whether descriptions of singing groves in medieval text refer to metaphorical inspiration or literal observation. You take a deep breath, letting the combined sense of wet leaves, mineral dust, and floral undertones settle into your senses, feeling a gentle lift in your spirit. As the path winds upward, you find a circular clearing where the stones form a natural amphitheatre. The ground slopes gently to a shallow pool in the centre, and as you step toward it, your footfalls produce subtle overtones that ripple outward, interacting with the pool's reflective surface. You crouch, letting your hands skim the water, and the resulting vibrations create an almost imperceptible melody, harmonizing with the soft hum of the surrounding monoliths. Historians still argue whether ancient ceremonial sites relied on such naturally occurring acoustic phenomena, or if they were enhanced deliberately. While fringe accounts suggest that attentive travellers can conduct the valley, creating transient music only perceptible to those who listen carefully, you can't help but smile at the idea, imagining yourself as both audience and performer in this ephemeral concert. Nearby, a narrow archway leads to a tunnel of stones etched with abstract symbols and spirals. You step inside, and the valley responds. The narrow walls amplify every sound, even the faintest whisper, while the moss-covered surfaces soften edges and create a lingering echo. Fringe stories claim that some inscriptions record sound vibrations, preserving them for future visitors, while historians still debate whether these etchings were symbolic, functional, or purely artistic. You trace your fingers along a spiral pattern, and a subtle vibration pulses back, as though acknowledging your touch. You laugh softly, thinking that the valley enjoys playful interactions as much as awe. The tunnel opens onto a small terrace overlooking a wider expanse of the valley below. Mist curls along the lower rocks, carrying the faintest notes of resonance that blend with distant streams and the rustle of foliage. You pause, taking it all in. The interplay of light, stone, water, and air creates a multi-layered sensory tapestry that is impossible to capture in words alone. Fringe enthusiasts suggest that some visitors experience brief glimpses of past travellers here, their impressions embedded in subtle vibrations or visual echoes, while historians remain skeptical of any literal interpretations. You shrug, deciding that skepticism has no place in moments like this. Instead, you let your senses roam freely, noting every shimmer, every note, every whispered echo. A delicate breeze lifts from the valley floor, carrying the combined scents of wet stone, moss, and distant wildflowers. It swirls around you, accentuating the harmonics of the stones and the water below, producing a soft, continuous chorus. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling both small and immense, suspended in the valley's timeless song. Fringe accounts claim that some travellers report a subtle sense of time dilation here, feeling as though minutes stretch into hours. While historians still debate whether descriptions of timeless spaces in ancient texts were metaphorical or literal, you smile, realizing that the valley doesn't need to conform to human notions of time. It exists on its own rhythm, inviting you to move in sync, even if only briefly. Finally, as dusk deepens, the terrace offers a breathtaking panorama, the valley stretching endlessly, its hum softened to a gentle lull, stones and mist glittering in fading light. Tiny pools reflect the last beams of sun, the stream's ripples forming a delicate, spontaneous melody. You take a deep, steadying breath, letting the combined sounds, scents, and sensations settle into a quiet reverence. The valley feels alive, playful, and wise all at once, a reminder that history, myth, and the senses can intertwine in ways you never imagined. You step back from the edge, ready to follow the next bend in the valley, curious, alert, and entirely present. The valley narrows once more, winding into a series of steep ridges that seem impossibly stacked, like the deliberate layers of a giant stone cake. Your boots crunch against gravel, and the valley hum rises, adapting subtly to the shift in terrain. Each note seems higher, sharper, almost like the valley is alerting you to the change. You glance upward. The ridges are etched with long, horizontal grooves that catch stray light, producing shifting ribbons of brightness across stone. Fringe accounts claim these grooves act as natural amplifiers, designed, or perhaps evolved, to alter the valley's acoustic signature. Historians still debate whether similar formations in real-world canyons were utilized for communication or ritualistic purposes, Though standing here, you feel the intention embedded in every contour. You pause to let the hum wash over you, marvelling at the delicate complexity. Along the incline, you encounter scattered fragments of crystals embedded in stone. They glint faintly, catching the remaining sunlight in refracted bursts that flash like tiny fireworks. You stoop to touch one, and the valley responds. A soft pulse reverberates through the ridge, a note so subtle it feels like the stone is exhaling. Fringe enthusiasts insist that these crystals act as tiny conductors, amplifying the valley's natural symphony. While historians still debate whether the ancients understood these effects or merely marvelled at their beauty, you let your fingers linger, listening to the subtle chorus that emerges when stone, crystal, and your presence coincide. It's playful, almost like the valley is teasing you with a musical handshake. A faint trail leads off the main path, winding between jagged outcrops covered in moss and lichen. You follow it cautiously, drawn by the quiet promise of discovery. Tiny flowers sprout from cracks in the stone, their petals translucent and catching the valley's hum in delicate resonance. The path becomes a sensory journey. Every step, every brush of foliage, every distant drip of water contributes to a complex layering of sound. Fringe accounts suggest that attentive travellers can perceive the valley responding to their emotional state, harmonizing with curiosity, calm, or hesitation. Historians still argue whether ancient cultures ever intentionally crafted spaces to interact with human presence in this way, or whether they simply appreciated the coincidental interplay of environment and emotion. Either way, the effect is mesmerizing. Eventually, the trail opens into a small plateau, overlooking a spiraling gorge below. The valley hums more deeply here, blending with the soft rush of water cascading from a hidden stream. You kneel at the edge, feeling vibrations through the stone beneath your hands, and notice tiny patterns etched into the ground, spirals, dots, and lines that seem to form a subtle, interactive score for the valley's natural symphony. Fringe enthusiasts whisper that these carvings play when humans step lightly along certain sequences, producing miniature harmonics that intertwine with larger natural sounds. Historians still debate whether such ground markings were ritualistic, educational, or symbolic, but standing here, the answer feels irrelevant. You try a few careful steps, listening to the delicate responses, and can't help but grin at the tiny, secretive performance. The gorge below reveals another stream, wider and more forceful than the last, its water sparkling with flecks of mineral that flash like liquid stars. Tiny droplets leap from the surface, hitting stones in the shallow riverbed and producing high, bell-like tones. The valley hum blends seamlessly with these percussive sounds, creating a multi-layered, natural composition that feels intentionally orchestrated. Fringe stories claim that these harmonics can communicate subtle warnings or guidance. Though historians remain skeptical, you step closer, letting the mist from the stream kiss your cheeks and feel a pulse of energy aligning with your own rhythm. It's absurdly delightful and slightly surreal. The kind of sensory overabundance you never forget. A set of narrow steps carved into stone leads you further upward, each ascent accompanied by subtle changes in tone. You notice that the valley's hum seems to respond to altitude, each step producing slightly higher, lighter overtones. Fringe lore insists that travellers who move in rhythm with the valley's vibrations may unlock fleeting glimpses of hidden paths or objects, while historians still debate whether such phenomena are intentional or coincidental. You adjust your gait, testing the effect, and swear you feel the valley lean in, as if approving your experiment. At the top, you reach a small ridge where the valley spreads out like an undulating quilt of stone, mist, and shadow. The hum softens into a gentle lull, accented by distant streams, wind through high foliage, and the subtle rattle of tiny stones shifting in a breeze. You pause, taking in the panorama, and the valley seems to exhale with you. Fringe accounts suggest that these moments of harmonic convergence can induce meditative or reflective states, while historians still argue whether ancient visitors to similar landscapes were guided by aesthetic wonder, ritual, or necessity. Either way, you let yourself be carried by the subtle symphony, feeling both grounded and uplifted in a rare, quiet equilibrium. Finally, as evening deepens, the ridge offers a gentle, natural bench of stone, smooth and slightly warmed by the day's sun. You sit, letting the valley's sounds, scents, and subtle vibrations envelop you completely. Tiny lights glimmer on distant stones. The stream below whispers its ongoing melody, and you feel a profound sense of connection to the valley's rhythm, a harmony of stone, water, wind, and subtle, ancient memory. You close your eyes, breathing deeply, and allow yourself to linger in this moment, fully immersed in the valley's playful, timeless song. You rise from the ridge and continue along a winding path that seems to fold in on itself, almost like the valley wants to keep its secrets close. Each turn reveals a new perspective, jagged stones catching the last rays of sun, pools reflecting fragmented light, and thin ribbons of mist curling through narrow crevices. The valley hum persists, but here it shifts again, adopting a warmer, almost vocal quality, as if the stones are sighing in contentment. Fringe enthusiasts claim that certain valleys possess a memory of visitor interactions, subtly altering hums and vibrations in response to human behaviour. While historians still argue whether such observations are anecdotal or rooted in empirical experience, you chuckle quietly, feeling both ridiculous and privileged to be part of this mysterious dialogue. A slender arch of stone rises ahead, draped in moss that glows faintly under fading sunlight. The arch forms a natural doorway into a smaller chamber, where sunlight dances on crystal veins, scattering a gentle, prismatic glow. As you step beneath it, the valley hum changes once more, layering itself with higher, bell-like tones that harmonize with the echoes of your footsteps. You crouch, brushing your fingers along a crystal embedded in the floor, and feel a faint vibration beneath your fingertips. Fringe accounts suggest these embedded minerals amplify subtle energy fields, enhancing perception and intuition, while historians still debate whether ancient builders understood the interplay between stone, crystal, and sound. You hum along softly, testing the resonance, and the valley seems to respond with a gentle pulse. Inside the chamber, you notice tiny carvings etched into every surface, abstract symbols, spirals, animal figures, and what could be humanoid forms. The sheer density of detail is staggering, and your fingers trace the grooves, feeling the textures shift under touch. Historians still argue whether such carvings served ritualistic, educational, or symbolic purposes, while fringe enthusiasts insist that they preserve echoes of past visitors, embedding subtle vibrations that can be perceived by attentive explorers. You whisper a greeting to the carvings, partly in jest, partly out of curiosity, and the chamber hums back in response, a delicate vibration that travels up your arms and through your chest. A tiny stream trickles through a narrow channel in the chamber, its water reflecting the prismatic light and producing high, crystalline notes as it strikes stones. You kneel and dip a hand in, noting that each movement produces a subtle ripple of sound, as if the water is actively participating in the chamber's symphony. Fringe stories suggest that the chamber acts as a natural instrument, encouraging interaction between visitor and environment. While historians debate whether such observations are purely subjective or based on the ancients' careful placement of stones and watercourses, either way, you feel immersed, part of a duet between human and valley. From a small alcove, a faint rustling draws your attention. You see a bird perched delicately on a stone ledge, its feathers shimmering in the prism of light. It chirps, and the sound blends seamlessly into the valley's hum, adding a lively counterpoint to the chamber's resonance. Fringe enthusiasts claim that wildlife in such valleys can instinctively play along with acoustic patterns, enhancing the sensory experience for human visitors, while historians still debate whether historical observers recorded these interactions deliberately or merely romanticized them. You smile, marveling at the way the simplest life forms contribute to the intricate natural orchestra surrounding you. You follow the chamber's gentle slope downward, and the valley hum deepens, layering with the gentle gurgle of a nearby underground stream. Tiny mineral deposits sparkle in the dimming light, and you notice subtle colour gradations in the stone walls, pale blues, soft pinks, muted golds, that seem almost imperceptibly alive, shifting with your perspective. Fringe lore claims that such colour shifts are part of the valley's subtle communication system, while historians still debate whether natural mineral variations were ever deliberately observed or exploited. You crouch, placing a hand on the stone, feeling a faint pulse, as if the valley is acknowledging your presence with quiet amusement. As the path curves, you enter a wider chamber where the ceiling opens slightly to the sky. Moonlight spills in, casting silver shafts across the floor, highlighting crystalline veins and the gentle sway of mist curling from the chamber's depths. The hum adjusts again, integrating with the soft light, creating a delicate, meditative harmony. Fringe enthusiasts claim that moonlight interacts with the stone's natural resonance, producing subtle psychoacoustic effects that enhance perception and calm, while historians still argue whether ancient observers understood or even recognized such phenomena. You let yourself lean back, breathing deeply, surrendering to the valley's immersive symphony of sight, sound, and touch. Finally, as the chamber's acoustics wrap around you, you notice an intricate pattern etched into the floor, almost a miniature labyrinth. You kneel, tracing it with your fingers, feeling a faint vibration that seems to follow the path of your touch. Fringe tales suggest these labyrinths encode subtle messages, stories, or even melodies, while historians still debate whether such designs were educational, ritualistic, or purely decorative. You hum softly, following the labyrinth's twists with your fingertips, and the chamber hums back, creating an ephemeral duet between your curiosity and the valley's ancient memory. You leave the moonlit chamber and descend a narrow, winding path that hugs the side of a steep ridge. The valley hum shifts subtly again, adopting a lower, almost resonant tone, like a gentle cello underlying the higher, bell-like notes of the stones you passed earlier. Tiny rivulets trickle down moss-covered walls, creating a delicate percussion that harmonizes with the valley's ongoing symphony. Fringe enthusiasts insist that valleys like this are living instruments, responding in real time to human presence, while historians still argue whether ancient travelers would have consciously noticed, or even sought, such subtleties. You smile at the thought and slow your steps, allowing the full sensory experience to settle around you. A series of small terraces open before you, each one adorned with tiny, intricate carvings, geometric patterns, animals in mid-motion, abstract spirals that seem to lead the eye naturally along the valley's contours. You crouch to examine one particularly complex spiral and trace it with your fingertips. Fringe tales suggest that these carvings store subtle vibrations, almost like a recording of every visitor who touched them, while historians still debate whether they served ritualistic, navigational, or purely decorative purposes. Either way, the tactile resonance produces a tingling sense of connectivity, as if you are momentarily entwined with centuries of travellers. The path bends to the left, revealing a small pool fed by a narrow waterfall. The water catches the fading light, scattering it into a delicate prism, and each droplet produces faint, crystalline tones when it strikes the surface. You lean close, dipping a finger into the cool liquid, and the valley responds. A subtle ripple of vibration travels through the stones beneath your hand, harmonizing with the ambient hum. Fringe enthusiasts claim such pools preserve echoes of the valley's acoustic memory, replaying the presence of past visitors in faint, imperceptible tones. Historians still argue whether references to listening pools in medieval texts describe actual practice or poetic metaphor. But standing here, you feel the blend of both, physical resonance and quiet storytelling. A faint rustling draws your attention to a grove of thin trees growing from cracks in the stone. Their bark is streaked with silver, and the leaves shimmer faintly in the dimming light. Tiny birds flutter among the branches, their soft calls harmonizing seamlessly with the valley's ambient hum and the plinking of water. Fringe accounts claim that wildlife here instinctively participates in the valley's symphony, while historians still debate whether similar phenomena were consciously observed in antiquity or merely idealized in stories. You pause, listening to the delicate orchestration, feeling a sense of awe at the layering of life, stone, water, and sound. Continuing along the path, you reach a cluster of monoliths leaning inward to form a natural archway. The stones hum in perfect counterpoint to the valley's background, and faint veins of mineral glint under the last rays of sunlight. You step beneath the arch and feel a subtle vibration running through your feet, as though the valley itself is acknowledging your passage. Fringe enthusiasts argue that such formations act as acoustic gateways, subtly altering perception and enhancing sensory awareness, while historians still debate whether ancient travellers attributed mystical significance or purely aesthetic admiration to these natural phenomena. You chuckle softly, imagining a hidden orchestra tuning itself to your movements. The path slopes gently upward to a plateau where tiny flowers sprout from cracks in the stones, their translucent petals reflecting ambient light. You kneel to brush your fingers along one, and the valley hum responds with a soft, harmonic ripple. Fringe lore claims that these flowers are not merely decorative but subtly resonate with the environment, interacting with the valley's vibrations to amplify sensory perception. Historians still argue whether references to singing flora in ancient texts were metaphorical or based on observation, but here the effect is undeniably present. You feel a faint tingling, a playful acknowledgement from the valley itself. A small alcove opens to your right, revealing a miniature amphitheatre carved from stone. Tiny pools collect the mist drifting in from above, and the valley hum resonates perfectly within the curved walls. You lean back on a smooth stone, closing your eyes to let the multi-layered symphony of wind, water, mist, and hum envelop you. Fringe enthusiasts suggest that spaces like this were intentionally listening chambers or natural acoustic laboratories, while historians still debate whether the ancients recognized the properties or simply admired the effects. Either way, the experience is hypnotic. Finally, as the plateau opens to a broader view of the valley, you pause, taking a deep breath. The hum softens, blending seamlessly with distant streams, gentle wind, and the faint rustle of leaves. Tiny crystals embedded in the stone sparkle faintly, catching the last light like stars scattered across the ground. Fringe accounts insist that attentive travellers might perceive subtle echoes of past visitors, harmonising with the valley's present soundscape, while historians remain sceptical. You close your eyes and let the sensory layers wash over you, feeling fully immersed, grounded, and subtly uplifted. The valley's song is at once ancient and immediate, playful and solemn, a living testament to time, stone, and human curiosity. The path narrows as you descend toward a low-lying grove tucked between steep ridges. Mist curls lazily around gnarled roots and moss-covered stones, creating a soft, almost dreamlike veil that diffuses the valley's hum into gentle, rippling tones. You step carefully, feeling the subtle vibration underfoot and noticing how the ambient sound changes with each movement. Fringe enthusiasts claim that the valley responds to human presence in a highly sensitive manner, subtly harmonizing or shifting based on emotion and motion. while historians still debate whether such interactions were observed or simply imagined by travellers of old. You shake your head with a soft smile. You don't need the answer, only the experience. In the grove, thin streams crisscross the path, each producing high, crystalline notes as water strikes the stones. You kneel to touch one, and a small, unexpected chorus of ripples resonates, harmonizing with distant echoes from the surrounding ridges. Historians still argue whether natural waterways were appreciated for their acoustic properties, or if their role in folklore was primarily symbolic. While fringe sources suggest that valleys like this may record human activity, replaying faint impressions of steps, whispers, or even laughter for those attuned to subtle resonance. You laugh quietly at the thought. Maybe the valley has a sense of humour. A cluster of trees grows along a slightly elevated embankment, their leaves whispering in the faint breeze. Tiny birds flit through the branches, their chirps weaving effortlessly into the existing hum. You crouch to examine a patch of moss at the base of one tree and notice faint symbols etched into the stone beneath. Spirals, lines, and abstract figures form a subtle map, or perhaps a musical notation for the valley's ongoing symphony. Fringe enthusiasts insist these carvings interact with the environment, subtly altering resonance when touched or approached, while historians still argue whether similar carvings in medieval and ancient texts were functional, ceremonial, or purely decorative. You trace the spirals with a fingertip, feeling the vibrations ripple softly through the stone, as though acknowledging your attention. Continuing, you come upon a natural amphitheatre, formed by a semicircle of massive stones. The hum of the valley intensifies subtly here, layered with a delicate percussive element from tiny rivulets spilling into shallow pools at the base. You step into the centre, noticing how even a quiet exhale produces a soft echo, joining the chamber's multi-layered composition. Fringe accounts suggest these natural amphitheatres allow humans to engage directly with the valley's acoustic memory, while historians still debate whether ancient travellers recognised these features or merely appreciated their aesthetics. You tilt your head back, listening, letting your breath merge with the hum. A small alcove along the path holds a crystalline pool fed by a narrow spring. The water's surface ripples in delicate patterns, reflecting fragments of light that shimmer like liquid stars. You dip your fingers in, producing subtle vibrations that resonate through the surrounding stones. Fringe enthusiasts claim that these pools act as conduits, amplifying and storing subtle harmonics from human interaction, while historians still debate whether early cultures attributed magical properties to similar natural features. You smile quietly, feeling a delicate thrill at being both observer and participant in the valley's quiet symphony. The mist thickens slightly as you ascend a short incline, carrying with it the scent of wet stone, moss, and distant wildflowers. You notice subtle shifts in the valley's hum, almost as if it is acknowledging your rising altitude. Fringe sources claim such changes heighten sensory perception, while historians still argue whether ancient travellers deliberately noted or exploited these acoustic variations. You laugh softly, imagining the valley as a mischievous conductor, orchestrating tones and vibrations just to test your attention. Finally, the path opens onto a higher terrace where sunlight filters in through breaks in the rocky canopy, catching veins of crystal in the stone and turning the mist into tiny prisms of light. The valley hum softens, blending with distant water and rustling leaves, producing a multi-layered, meditative harmony. You close your eyes, letting the interplay of sound, light, and scent envelop you fully. Fringe accounts insist that attentive travellers may perceive echoes of past footsteps or whispers embedded in the valley's resonance. While historians remain sceptical, you take a slow breath, feeling both suspended and grounded, fully immersed in the valley's timeless, playful symphony. You follow the winding path downward, entering a shadowed corridor flanked by massive stones streaked with faint luminescent veins. The valley hum grows richer here, layered with subtle overtones that seem almost melodic, like a chorus of hidden voices whispering in harmony. Fringe enthusiasts suggest these vibrations encode the memory of past visitors, subtly interacting with anyone who steps into the corridor. While historians still debate whether ancient accounts of singing stones were literal observations or poetic metaphor, you take a deep breath, letting the hum wash over your shoulders and feel a gentle vibration resonate through your chest. A narrow stream winds along the corridor's floor, its water clear and cold. As you kneel to touch it, tiny droplets scatter onto adjacent stones, producing delicate, crystalline tones that harmonize with the valley's ongoing hum. Fringe tales claim these streams amplify human intention or emotion, subtly influencing perception, while historians argue whether ancient travelers truly attributed mystical properties to running water or merely admired its aesthetic charm. You chuckle softly at the idea, letting the sound become part of your meditation, each drop adding a tiny accent to the valley's symphony. Along the path, small patches of moss cling to stone walls, glowing faintly in the dim light. You crouch, brushing your fingers across one patch, and notice tiny geometric patterns, dots, spirals, and lines woven into the moss's growth. Fringe accounts suggest these patterns respond to touch, subtly altering the valley's hum, while historians still debate whether similar designs in ancient texts were symbolic, ritualistic, or decorative. You hum softly along with the valley, testing the moss's response, and feel the vibrations ripple up your arm, a playful acknowledgement from the living stone. The corridor widens into a small amphitheatre-like chamber, the ceiling arched and dotted with crystalline veins that glint faintly. The valley hum resonates deeply here, layered with the gentle plink of water from a hidden stream. You step to the centre, listening as even the faintest breath produces a soft echo that joins the chamber's natural chorus. Fringe enthusiasts claim that these spaces allow travellers to communicate with the valley's acoustic memory, while historians still argue whether such awareness was intentional or incidental in ancient times. You tilt your head, letting your breath and the hum merge, feeling an intimate connection with the place. Tiny birds flit in through openings in the stone, their calls blending seamlessly with the hum and the gentle ripple of water. You crouch, observing a small flower blooming from a crack in the floor, its translucent petals refracting ambient light. Fringe lore claims these plants resonate with the valley, amplifying subtle acoustic frequencies, while historians still debate whether descriptions of singing flora reflect literal phenomena or metaphorical storytelling. You smile quietly, amused and delighted by the valley's playful attention to detail. A faint wind drifts through the chamber, carrying the scent of wet stone, moss, and distant flowers. You let it brush over your face, feeling the subtle vibrations in your chest and fingertips intensify in tandem with the valley's hum. Fringe accounts suggest such winds carry encoded echoes of past visitors, while historians still argue about the literal versus symbolic interpretation of ancient accounts. Either way, the effect is hypnotic, lulling you into a state of focused, contemplative awareness, your senses fully attuned to the valley's layered symphony. Finally, a natural archway leads you back to an open plateau where the valley stretches below in a soft cascade of stone, mist, and muted light. Tiny pools reflect glimmers of sun, streams whisper softly, and the valley hum settles into a calm, resonant cadence. You pause, closing your eyes and inhaling deeply, letting the accumulated sounds, scents, and textures soak into your being. Fringe enthusiasts claim that attentive travellers may detect faint traces of previous journeys here, while historians remain skeptical. You simply breathe, letting yourself be present, fully immersed in the valley's playful, timeless, and profoundly calming song. The trail slopes gently downward, leading you toward the valley's final stretch. Mist curls lazily along the path, carrying the subtle sense of wet stone, moss, and distant wildflowers. The hum of the valley softens here, adopting a languid, lullaby-like quality that seems perfectly synchronized with your own breathing. Fringe enthusiasts claim that valleys like this encode subtle echoes of every visitor, layering their presence into the hum, while historians still debate whether ancient references to singing valleys describe real acoustic phenomena or metaphorical reflection. You walk slowly, savouring the quiet intimacy, feeling both grounded and weightless, as if suspended between moments in time. Small rivulets trickle across your path, the water's crystalline notes harmonizing with the valley's fading hum. You kneel to touch a pool, watching ripples scatter and interact with the stone beneath, producing tiny echoes that feel like playful conversation. Fringe lore insists that water in such valleys acts as a memory keeper, subtly preserving the passage of travellers and their actions, while historians continue to argue whether such interpretations were literal or poetic. You chuckle softly, imagining tiny droplets recording your presence, gossiping quietly to the valley stones. A grove of wiry, silver-streaked trees appears, their leaves trembling in the gentle evening breeze. Birds flit among the branches, adding soft, improvisational notes to the valley's symphony. You crouch near the base of one tree, noticing faint spirals and geometric patterns in the moss and stone. A quiet map, perhaps, or a notation for the valley's ongoing melody. Fringe enthusiasts claim that touch can activate subtle resonances in these carvings, while historians still debate their original purpose, whether symbolic, ritualistic, or decorative. You trace a pattern with your fingertip, feeling a delicate pulse echo back, and grin at the subtle acknowledgement from this ancient, playful landscape. The path opens onto a shallow terrace where the valley spreads out like a flowing mosaic of stone, mist, and shadow. Streams cascade in the distance, their gentle rhythm harmonizing with the valley's hum, now soft enough to feel like a whisper. Crystalline veins in the stones catch the last light, scattering prismatic flashes across the ground. Fringe accounts suggest these natural harmonics can induce subtle shifts in awareness or meditative states, while historians still debate whether ancient travellers recognize such effects. You close your eyes, absorbing the combined sensory tapestry, sound, scent, touch, and light interwoven seamlessly. Tiny alcoves line the edges of the terrace, some holding miniature statuettes carved from stone and crystal, their surfaces etched with abstract shapes. Fringe stories claim they act as guardians, resonating with human presence and amplifying the valley's symphony, while historians still argue about their ceremonial or decorative significance. You pause to trace one statuette's patterns with your fingers, feeling a subtle vibration that seems to sync with the valley's soft lull, as though encouraging your calm reflection. As twilight deepens, the valley hum dwindles into soft undertones, blending with the gentle rustle of leaves, distant bird calls, and the last trickle of streams. You take a deep breath, feeling fully immersed in this multi-layered sensory environment. Fringe enthusiasts whisper of time dilation in such moments, a sensation that minutes stretch and compress in tandem with the valley's resonance. While historians remain cautious about literal interpretations, you smile, letting go of measurement, allowing yourself to drift with the valley's rhythm. Finally, you sit upon a smooth stone at the edge of the terrace, surveying the valley below bathed in twilight. Mist curls, water glints faintly, and the last notes of the hum ripple through the air. You close your eyes and let the valley's song enfold you, a gentle, playful, and timeless lullaby. Every sensory thread, the scent of moss, the crystalline flashes, the layered hum merges into a profound sense of calm. You breathe slowly, feeling present and quietly joyful, the valley's memory now interwoven with yours. Now, as the valley's symphony softens to a whisper, allow yourself to settle fully, letting each sensation linger. Feel the smooth stone beneath you, the faint tremor of the valley's hum tracing delicate lines along your body. The mist carries the scent of damp earth and wild flowers, a comforting reminder that nature's rhythm continues uninterrupted. Streams murmur gently, water striking stone in tiny, playful cascades, blending seamlessly with the whisper of wind and the subtle tremble of distant leaves. Each sound, each shimmer of light, each pulse of vibration is part of an intricate, living lullaby crafted over centuries. Let your thoughts drift slowly, like leaves on the valley's gentle currents. There is no need to analyze, no need to judge, only to experience, to feel the valley's playful presence and timeless attention. The soft hum resonates within you, each note winding through your muscles, loosening tension and coaxing a gentle calm from the deepest corners of your mind. Even as the world beyond the valley continues its restless pace, here you are suspended, enveloped in a sanctuary built of stone, water, and subtle memory. The valley does not rush, and neither should you. With each breath, feel yourself becoming part of its ongoing song, a delicate interaction that is fleeting, yet profound. Visualize the mist curling around the stones, the faint prismatic flashes of sunlight, and the tiny ripples in the streams, all blending into a serene tapestry that soothes and restores. Allow your eyelids to grow heavy, your muscles to relax, and your thoughts to settle into a soft, meandering rhythm. You're safe, you're present, and the valley's lullaby will carry you gently through the night.